My name is Chris, and I got to know Ryno in 2015 when I had issues with an inland border patrol checkpoint, and I sought his advice in navigating the pending actions by my chain of command. Ryno provided detailed insights, and I credit him for protecting my career. He asked me, a retired crew chief, to provide an introduction to his film. I guess he figured if a fighter crew chief could explain it, anyone listening could probably understand it. I must warn you, the video you are about to watch is very dense. It represents a 20-year career condensed down to about 3 minutes per year of service, so you may want to pause it to read emails presented on the screen. Ryno's career starts against foreign enemies in the way we imagine our military to operate, but it really begins to show its value when he leaves his combat command and enters the training world under Air Education and Training Command at Laughlin Air Force Base. There, Ryno challenged a myriad of domestic enemies to our Constitution masquerading in uniform. This part of the video is particularly information dense, as Ryno apparently didn't heed the teachings of Sun Tzu since he challenged multiple enemies simultaneously. The domestic enemies of the Constitution included Air University, which had little regard for the First Amendment, a local police officer who had no regard for the Fourth Amendment, and the U.S. Border Patrol, which had no regard for the Fourth Amendment as well. And unfortunately, it included his local chain of command and Air Education and Training Command that was more than happy to use these incidents to punish a reformer voice within their own ranks. When a fighter pilot violated Ryno's academic freedom by sharing his controversial statements throughout Ryno's chain of command, Air University was slow to redress the issue, and only did so when Ryno went to the Air Force Times media publication. In the next incident, the chain of command deferred to a local police officer because Ryno didn't have evidence to support his side of the story. Afterwards, when Ryno had an encounter with Border Patrol agents, he provided irrefutable evidence of precisely what happened. Unsurprisingly, but equally disappointing, his chain of command still turned his staunch defense of the Constitution against him and treated it as a part of a larger negative track record, demonstrating that evidence has little to no actual value. In response, Ryno began recording the domestic enemies in uniform, knowing that their primary weapon was misinformation and deceit. However, despite presenting evidence of the lies from Laughlin Air Force Base official, his career was sabotaged, and the Air Force Inspector General, and even the Board of Corrections, refused to take appropriate action, despite having undeniable proof that those accusing Ryno were the actual liars. Ryno didn't leave Laughlin unscathed. He carried his battle scars from the training command back into the operational world where he would face his biggest challenge to the Constitution to date, and thrust him into a situation where he found himself at odds with the President of the United States. Ryno's refusal to conduct a mission to assassinate an American citizen without charge or trial, in violation of the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, resulted in Ryno resigning his commission just 5 years short of retirement eligibility. It's at this point, you the viewer, can start to see the value of Ryno's previous professional conflicts in Air Education and Training Command as he encounters an unprecedented and historic moment. This video isn't easy. It's no small task to distill 20 years of service into an hour and a half, but I hope you will agree, this video is worth watching.
He was offered the chance to upgrade the aircraft commander, and so he went to Little Rock. And while he was at Little Rock, September 11th happened. Okay. 2 days after September 11th, he volunteered to fly gunships, even though he knew it meant giving up his AC upgrade and starting over again as a co-pilot. And a few months later, he was here at Herbie to begin what would become the most rewarding chapter of his career. Not least, of course, because this is where we met, in this very room, when Seth Junkins introduced me as the new intel person from Harvard, and Ryno decided he needed to take me to lunch to prove how much smarter he was. I'll let you decide for yourself how that turned out. The opportunity to fly real combat missions at the 4th was a truly rewarding one. To help save American lives, there's really nothing more you can ask for in the Air Force to do. And we deployed together in OIF. I remember now General Clark coming to the intel shop and saying, there's going to be this hit night mission. 2 crews are going to go down south. I thought it was going to be very dangerous. I went to Ryno and I said, there's going to be this mission, 2 crews are going. I really hope it's not you. Of course, he was on one of the crews. It went off famously and successfully. But those were very long, very rewarding days.
We're quite at the stage where we can say that there is absolutely nobody left in this area who is hostile, but it's certainly mission accomplished. The mission, remember, was to secure the oil infrastructure before it could be destroyed. That's accomplished. And to secure the port of Qazar for humanitarian aid. That's accomplished, although, as I say, there are still some people in there who are not entirely friendly.
Right when we landed, there's people right around us, different directions.
We had individuals that gave up instantly. We also had individuals that gave up a fight. The fight was short.
And this culture of the squadron at the 4th, I think, was a very good one for Ryno. I'm not sure quite how to put this. A little bit rough around the edges. Ryno describes it as having to fight for your lunch money every day at work. But the squadron had a combat mission. It was unified, and combat produces the best leadership. And it was a very, very rewarding chapter. About this time, we're about 10 years into the career. A few patterns have emerged. Ryno loved to fly. He loved the mission, but additional duties? No. Checking the boxes that might help with promotion? Not really. Being the most likable guy in the squadron? Probably not. So when it came time for his major's board, the wing commander, in an episode that we still chuckle about today, the wing commander here at this base called him in and said, "Your PRF makes me uncomfortable." All Ryno responded was, "Thanks for getting it to me with the bark on, sir." There's that AFSOC honesty for you. But amazingly, he did get promoted, although he pretended to me that he didn't, and I actually believed him. He's had the gift of lucky timing throughout his career, and he went on to be an IP at Laughlin. And I'll interject here for the benefit of his Pensacola colleagues especially, that Ryno really did want to be a good IP. He remembered fondly those IPs who really helped him at pilot training.
And your flying is great. The kids, for the most part, like it. When I look through the write-ups.
But in the 10 years since his own pilot training, he'd become a little crotchety, ornery, lacking in patience, perhaps. Or as one lieutenant we met at the time said, bitter, washed-up old major. But everyone knows lieutenants don't know what they're talking about, right? But Laughlin turned out to be a very important chapter for a very different reason. Now, I know you've all heard Ryno talk about the Constitution.
Please repeat after me. I
State
your name.
Manager Helen Hunt,
Having been appointed a captain, judge advocate,
having been appointed a captain, judge advocate,
United States Air Force,
United States Air Force,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office upon which I'm about to enter.
of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Captain Hunt.
And you've all heard him talk about moral courage. And I want you to know, those are not just words, and they're not just hot air. They really are principles that he lives by. And they're principles that he's risked his career for, not once, not twice, but frankly, more times than I was able to keep track of. And the first time, I was still in law school, and I remember thinking to myself, hey, could you just wait till I graduated and have a job or something? But no. And it started with an IG complaint filed against the entire chain of command, all the way up to and including the AETC commander, for the unit's failure to comply with a PT reg that then required the unit to give 3 duty hours for PT time. The Air Force changed the reg shortly thereafter, but needless to say, this did not win Ryno many friends in the Laughlin leadership.
The Air Force has flown nearly 1 million missions in the war on terror, with an average of 300 sorties per day, ranging from lift to medevac to close air support. The contributions of airmen have made a real difference for those fighting on the ground. But in my view, we can do and we should do more to meet the needs of men and women fighting in the current conflicts while their outcome may still be in doubt. My concern is that our services are still not moving aggressively in wartime to provide resources needed now on the battlefield. I've been wrestling for months to get more intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets into the theater. Because people were stuck in old ways of doing business, it's been like pulling teeth. While we've doubled this capability in recent months, it is still not good enough. As up-and-coming Air Force leaders, I urge you to explore creative new ways airmen writ large can apply their skill and talent and weaponry as the forms and patterns of this new era still settle into place. A substantial number of Air Force general officers and colonels have been identified as potentially subject to disciplinary measures, ranging from removal from command to letters of reprimand. Such measures, whether taken by the Air Force or by my direction, might help address the immediate problems, but I have concluded would not adequately address the broader issues involved. Accordingly, after discussion with the President and with the support of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I have accepted the resignation of the Secretary of the Air Force and the resignation of the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. In summary, I believe these actions are required because, first, the focus of the Air Force leadership has drifted. It is my responsibility to ensure that the Air Force is on the right path.
And about a year later, he was pulled over unconstitutionally by a San Antonio police officer. And when he questioned why the police officer pulled him over without cause, he was arrested. For what? Supposedly failing to signal a lane change. Of course, that charge was dismissed, but Laughlin didn't wait for that to shake out before they awarded Ryno an LOR.
I'm Brigadier General Tony Rock, Commandant of the Air Command and Staff College, and I'm here today to talk about academic freedom. Academic freedom, also referred to as a non-attribution policy, is absolutely critical in the academic environment, and we at Air University take it extremely seriously. It ensures AU faculty and students benefit from freedom of expression and a diverse and rich exchange of ideas. To this end, it's AU's policy that students and faculty will not attribute the statements of lecturers, faculty, or fellow students to any agencies outside this educational forum without the express permission of the person that made the statement. This applies to all media provided through or to this program. Your diligence is required, considering this course is online, where quick transmittal of information is not only possible, but simplified, making the temptation all the more likely. If it becomes necessary for you to refer to the remarks of others outside this forum, you should frame the reference in general terms to protect the original author's identity. You need to be aware that we enforce the policy on academic freedom just as vigorously as we do our policy on academic integrity. The ramifications of violating the policy can be severe and may include summary dismissal from the program. It could also result in UCMJ or other disciplinary action by the AU commander and the violator's local commander. Individuals who believe their academic freedom has been violated may seek redress by notifying their course instructor. You will encounter diverse ideas, books, and people that could challenge your preconceived ideas and beliefs. In fact, I hope it does. This intellectual diversity, sometimes resulting in tension and exchanging competing ideas, are an important catalyst in the development of critical thinking skills.
Hey, sir, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm great.
It's nice to meet you.
Lieutenant Kimberger's already got the stick on this.
Okay.
Now, do you have an idea when you're going to do the interview?
I don't. Nope. I'm just trying to figure out what the clearance is, and then I haven't quite decided if I'm going to do it or not.
Okay. Well, the bottom line is a wing commander will probably be the last one to do it.
Okay.
Because it's his wing, and he's it's his wing.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be Nazis. We're trying to take good care of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about doing an article with Air Force One.
Right.
I know that you expressed that it's going to be over academic freedom,
Mm-hmm.
And you're just kind of looking at your thoughts, challenges,
Yeah.
some of your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me, is it favorable, not favorable?
Well, I think it's favorable as far as echoing our Air University stated beliefs on the necessity of academic freedom, and then it's trying to achieve the Secretary of Defense and the Chief of Staff's vision for cultural transformation that we're looking for, and cultural analysis and those things. But it's also bringing up challenges that we're having with that in Air University, in my perspective. So what else will you need from me for this story then?
Well, we like to make sure everybody's smart. We want to make sure you're prepared. We want to gather as much information as we can.
Okay.
Because we look at ourselves in some ways as your PR agent.
Okay.
We want to keep you out of trouble.
Sure.
We are your advocates here. We do want to take care of you.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
Because if this blows up, well, we get splat on it.
What I would say would help with the direction our senior leadership is trying to take the Air Force. I think it's something that should be said, and I think it's a positive thing for the Air Force. Yeah, so I think it's a positive thing, and so I'm pretty happy to do it. But of course, I want to make sure that I'm being professional about it, of course. And so if there's any necessary steps that I need to take, then I certainly want to make sure I check those boxes. I haven't dealt with the Air Force times before.
They take a baseball bat to the Air Force flight regularly.
Yeah.
So we do try to keep things somewhat open. They keep putting it out there.
Yeah.
So I mean, they beat up 1, 3, or 4-star. They beat up other folks in the Air Force. It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Did he deserve it or no?
Depends on who you ask.
Well, if you have information of them not being an honest broker, or them being dishonest, if you can provide me with that information, that will factor heavily.
Well, and here's what it is.
Because I'm not interested in any of that.
We look at these kind of outlets and these kinds of ways to get the message out. So if there's a message that we're trying to push, and Air Force Times is the best venue to push that, then absolutely. For instance, we dealt with them a couple months ago when we had the UAS. The UAS situation was dropping and got a lot of negative press. And so what we did was we pulled some of our pilots who had the potential to get a UAS.
Yeah.
And we had them interview with some of our Air Force Times
guys.
And they expressed the message out there that, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
My top choice.
Right.
I'm going to be honest with you, but if I get it, I get it.
And that's a responsible and a good professional message. And it needs to be pushed.
Absolutely.
There's something bigger than what you want. Okay.
Right.
Okay. But anyway, we're all in agreement that we want to make sure that this message is professional and is good for the Air Force as a whole. Right. So we can agree on that.
And so what we'll do is we'll take what we know, and for something like Air Force Times and something like a little bit bigger, we have to have wing commander kind of look at it, bless it. So if you've got some messages that you know that you want to press out, I've got echoing state of beliefs at AU, and then just going along with the cultural analysis and cultural change that is got the Air Force. But if you've got, if you no kidding know exactly what you're gonna, I don't know what you said to the editor. But if there's discussion there that we can have some insight on, so that when we walk it upstairs, we can say, sure, these are the questions that the Air Force Times reporter is going to ask. These are Major Rainerson's proposed responses. This is his overall objective. He'll look at it. He'll have to bless it on behalf of Laughlin.
Right.
The second edge of that is because we're talking about AU, because we're stepping on somebody else's turf, we'll have to go through AU and tell the AU Public Affairs.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think it would be a surprise. If you contact your university, I think they'll be pretty informed on what they can expect.
If I say your name?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they know me.
Okay.
So, I mean, the messages that's going to be discussed is going to be the importance of academic freedom in our military PME, especially when we are attempting to fulfill guidance given by our Secretary of Defense and our Chief of Staff in cultural analysis and transforming our Air Force to best fight our nation's wars.
Do you have specific examples that you're going to bring up in this Times article?
Yes.
Share those?
I can.
Okay.
Yep, academic freedom was denied to me by, it was violated by a student in the class.
Okay.
And that student admitted the violation.
Are you planning on referring to the student by name?
Nope, I'm not. Not necessary. The fact that he's an F-15C fighter pilot, that will probably make it in there.
Is it relevant?
Yes, yes it is. So in accordance with the Academic Freedom Regulation, AUI, regulation, I filed a petition for redress, but my ability to post to the course discussion was removed, so I was no longer allowed to, I was censored for the rest of the course, and the idea apparently being that if I could say nothing, then he couldn't further violate my academic freedom. And the regulation says that students who believe that they have had their academic freedom violated may file a petition for redress with Air University, and then the Air University commander is the final decision. I did that. The student had already admitted to the instructor the infraction. The infraction was him taking my comments, culturally criticizing what I believe is a culture much in need of reform, specifically the F-15C fighter pilot community. And he took that and sent that all throughout AETC. It's been all over Laughlin Air Force Base. It went to the Chief of Staff's executive officer, and then from him to Langley, and then from Langley to Randolph, and then from Randolph to my supervisor. And I was called when I was TUI and asked, did you write this on behest of the 19th Air Force commander, okay, who was obviously angry at my comments. And I said,
did they know that you had written it in a...
Well, that was in what it said in the email chain. It did say from my ACSE class. So had they read the email, they should have known it was PME discussion. So the email energized the 19th Air Force commander, who energized all of my chain of command, and I was called and asked about it. And I said, yes, I did write that, but it's supposed to have been protected by academic freedom. It wasn't. So the petition for redress was sent up, and it's been 3 months, and Air University has made no recommendation to the Air University commander on anything to be done. So nothing has been done yet. The student was not removed or punished in any way, and I was censored out of it. So, and I think that's not the way to go, because, I'm not saying that I have all the right answers or anything like that, but, I've been around the block a few times. In fact, I'd say I'm far more experienced in combat than any of these other people. And I would like to think that my viewpoint wouldn't be censored or discounted or made the catalyst for punitive action taken against me. I mean, I have some viewpoints, I have some experiences. I think that, if you want to debate, then I welcome the debate. But PME is not providing, in my experience, academic freedom. And I'm not the only person to have these experiences, although most people don't take these experiences as far as I do. They usually play the game, but I'm not a game player because war is not a game. Ask myself, am I doing the right thing as a military officer? When I see somebody who, in my operation, my job is to protect them, and I see them lay down their life and I watch it happen, it makes me question and go, man, am I doing everything I need to do? Was his death worth it? And one of those things, I'm vested in this war. I want to see the country win. I don't like watching headlines where our president is struggling with Afghanistan and Iraq, and the Air Force is being accused of not doing all it can do to support the war. Okay, and these are valid charges. I don't like to see that. Thank God we have great leadership right now. Our Secretary of Defense and our Chief of Staff are both phenomenal, but the message is not necessarily filtering down where it should be, and it makes it difficult for us to respond to our leadership and challenge our culture and say, hey, these are the good things that we want to keep, and these are the things that we need to change if we can't have that discussion in our PME, which is the place where we should have it.
I think you're different to me in that you've had the combat experience, but I also get the vibe you've got an intellectual perspective and you enjoy the academic environment.
I think it's important, and I think that it's a message that the Air Force needs to consider, and I think this is a message my leadership would want me to say. Listening to Secretary of Defense Gates and Maxwell, I believe I am answering my senior leadership with my actions. Well, you have all that information. What should I do now? Just wait for you to have the Wing King take a look at it?
We'll go ahead and get it up to him.
Okay. So,
do you have anything else out there that might pique their interest?
The Air Force Times?
Yeah. Do you have any writing, anything that...
Oh, yeah, I probably do.
Would you care to enlighten us, or are you
well, I'd like to keep it separate. I don't plan on telling them anything about my writings. So, I mean, I have no writings I plan on giving them.
Okay. When I go into an interview, I'd like to make sure there are no surprises.
Right.
Any chance they might have these.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they might have access to my blog.
Okay.
That's true.
So what is your blog about?
You can go to it, pickyourbattles.net. Cop comes up to the car. I have the window down. I have my insurance and my ID in my hand. And he says, license and insurance. And I said, why did you pull me over? He said, because you had an out-of-state license plate, and I wanted to make sure that you have a driver's license. So I said, confirm you pulled me over randomly without any cause? And he said, get out of the vehicle. When I said that. And then I said, okay, so now confirm you're now ordering me out of my vehicle. And he said, yes, get out of your vehicle. And he took a step back. I got out of the vehicle. He told me to face my car, which I assumed he was going to disarm me because his computer knew that I am a concealed carry person or something like that. And as soon as I turned around and looked at my car, he put handcuffs on me. And he just slapped them on. He sits there and does a bunch of paperwork. And then he says, this is your one chance. You can sign the citation and be on your way, or you can spend the night in jail. And he goes, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't remember not using my turn signal, but I can't say that I didn't. So I will sign the citation. But I remain concerned because when I asked you why you pulled me over, you said it was because I had an out-of-state license plate. He said, that's it, you're going to jail. He pulled me over he arrested me because I questioned and pointed out to him in doing so that he was wrong. And that's why he arrested me. It's simple ego. This guy is wrong. He's a bad cop. He lies. And there's plenty of cops like him. So, I mean, why would
Were you pissed off I'm just trying to figure out what led to this.
The cop is an egomaniac who does not want anybody to question him at all. When I said, confirm
you know that. Cops are cops.
Well, so there's good cops. Because he was wrong. He was wrong. He can't pull me over just because I have an out-of-state license plate. He's detaining me, which is, it is a Fourth Amendment thing, against unreasonable searches and seizures, and he has seized me by pulling me over. It's my constitutional right, and I take that seriously. So when he pulls me over and says, and I say, why did you pull me over? And he goes, because I don't like white people. I don't say, oh, okay, well, officer. I say, why? Why did you do that? You're denying me my constitutional rights. So I'm going to question him. I'm an American. I don't understand why the leadership doesn't understand why I would question an officer. I don't understand that.
It just sounds like you're picking a fight.
I'm not picking a fight at all. What kind of an American would I be? What kind of a man would I be if I'm going to go, okay, officer, and I'm not going to question that and go, that's wrong. So, Anyway, that's what happened. There's plenty of bad cops. I've seen it a million times. He's a lying piece of shit, and the chain of command doesn't like me. They don't like me for precisely the same reason he arrested me, because I question authority, and the chain of command doesn't like that. I realize that. And I've got battles going on all through ATC, and
What battles did you?
well, the IG complaint that I filed against basically the entire chain of command for the PT non-compliance thing.
When was that?
Started about a year and a half ago. Filed it against the group commander, wing commander, 2-star general, 4-star in charge of ATC. Went all through the IG system all the way up to the top. I was saying they're not complying with PT here, blah, 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 blah. And that ended up resulting in a letter from General Lorenz, which he wrote to me 2 weeks after the Air Force said commanders are not complying, and the Air Force changed the PT program as a result. But anyway, so there's that battle. So I have no friends there. Then there's Air University, where in my ACSC distance learning class on air power, I put my thoughts in about the F-15C pilot culture and the fighter pilot culture. So basically doing a cultural analysis on that, and totally well within my bounds to say this. Everything was, people can disagree with me, certainly not a problem. But one of the F-15C pilots in the class took that, sent it in an email, went all over. It went to Laughlin, went to Randolph, went all through the F-15C community, a whole bunch. Yeah, that went from the chief of staff of the Air Force's executive officer to Langley, to Randolph, to my boss here. Okay, and then I also went to the 19th Air Force commander.
To me?
No, to his replacement.
Brocky.
Yeah, Colonel Brocky. The 19th Air Force commander, 2-star, energized the chain of command to find out if I wrote that, even though in the email text it says itself it was an ACSC. So, in my opinion, they should have known that it's academically protected. But still, energized the chain of command, and I'm getting called while on TDY. Did you write this? Yes, I did, but it's protected by academic freedom, or at least it's supposed to be. Okay, now I've got a 19th Air Force commander, F-15C pilot, energizing my almost all F-15C chain of command. Obviously, they don't like me. I mean, that's the way it is, and that's fine. If they don't have to like me, but if they're using this to make hay, I'm going to fight them every step of the way. This incident. Well, in AETC, I've got a lot of political fights. I'm fighting with Air University.
Doesn't that tell you something?
It does tell me something. It tells me that just what the Secretary of Defense says, that there's a lot of cultural analysis and cultural changes that are needed in the Air Force. That is right, and that's what it tells me. I'm trying to do my part to change parts of our culture that are wrong, and one of the significant part of that culture is leadership that doesn't do the right thing. So whether it be in Air University when academic freedom isn't recognized, then I fight that battle because it's wrong, and because you can't have an air education system where officers who don't say the right thing are punished.
It sounds like your theory is that there was a cop waiting on the corner just waiting to fuck with you.
What I do know is that he lied several times, and that I was detained illegally, and I was arrested illegally, and my chain of command on top of it is failing to support me. And that's a trend item, apparently, on this base, from talking to other people. That concerns me.
How am I failing to support?
Well, the OG, basically in his meeting, is making it sound like, he clearly thought I was to blame. He clearly thought that regardless of what happened, if I got arrested, it had to be my fault. And I'm hearing traces of that from you as well.
Well, here's my concern, is I have a police report that this, obviously, if you're telling me the truth, then he's lying.
Right.
If he's telling the truth, you're lying.
Right.
Okay, so makes sense, right?
Okay.
But I've got an official document that says this is what happened.
Okay, do I need to write an MFR? And then, one thing people would say about me, I would imagine, is number one is I don't know when to shut up, or I don't play the game. That's probably one. But the other thing is that I'm honest. People probably say that I'm too honest. Why would I lie over some stupid shit like this? My integrity is well beyond this, and I can't believe that my chain of command would just turn like that. And the worst thing this chain of command should do is say, we have no idea what happened, and stay out of it. But if they wanted to get into the evidence is all there. It supports me.
What evidence is it?
The fact that He charged me with what? A lane change. Where's the unruly conduct? Where's all these other charges? Anyway, and if you want to get to his word against my word, why would I choose this battle? Why would I go down the road for this?
I don't know. You've gone down the road on a lot of things.
What do you mean?
Well, you self-admitted that you've got.
Right.
I'm going down the road on the PT test.
Right, I did.
I'm going down the road on the other one.
Yeah, Air University, academic freedom, and I'm right on both of those. And the Air Force said I was right on the PT program, and now things are better, which is good. Leadership was wrong. I helped get a better system, so it's good to go. Academic freedom, Air University, it's a policy, it's a regulation, and it makes sense because until we get a situation where people can critically think and they can have these discussions, and even if they're unpopular, it's okay, and you don't have somebody tattletaling to his boss, unless you have academic freedom, then you're going to have the same closed-minded morons that get promoted and make this Air Force suck.
Did somebody give you do you have documentation? Do you have any paperwork on this? For the paper that you wrote?
You mean as far as academic freedom?
Yeah, you seem to be, was this a fight?
No, it's a debate, discussion.
Did anybody give you any shit for it?
The 19th Air Force commander energized my chain of command, and my boss called me to pass up to that general if I wrote the article or not. That's clearly he was pissed off by the article, in which I said I've seen multiple examples of worthless F-15C leadership in AETC. For example, that phrase probably really pissed him off, but it's a phrase that just continues to get validated in my experience. So, you don't like what I have to say, that's fine, but that's the academically protected environment. And until we have a truly academically protected environment, we're going to have the same careerists and people who are ruining the Air Force as they have been ruining the Air Force. This isn't a game. This doesn't exist just for our jobs, just because we want a 20-year retirement. I mean, there's a war, and a lot of people don't have that perspective, and they're screwing it up. And it's my job as an officer on all of these levels to provide my feedback.
How do you decide which stance to take on? Do you ever just say that?
I do.
Why this one?
Academic freedom or this? Why am I going to fight this cop?
Yeah, let me think. Had I been pulled over in that situation, I would have given my license and registration. He would have said, "Well, you're giving me for the illegal lane change your house state tag." I said, "Yes, I'm from Colorado, blah, blah, blah."
That's how you would have handled it.
And he would have let me go.
Okay, so if he would have pulled you over and he would have said, "I'm pulling you over because I don't like dudes that are in the Air Force. So let me see your license and registration." You would have said, "Here's my license and registration."
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's just not worth the fight.
That's un-American, in my opinion. I mean, you took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, right? Fourth Amendment. Yeah, that to me is un-American. So, and enough people like that do that, and we'll wake up and we won't have any freedom. Yeah. And that's the way it works. So, how are you defending the Fourth Amendment if you just let cops do whatever? If you're submissive, I mean, how is that American to be submissive? I mean, what if he comes over and just says, "I want to stare at your wife"? Or let me see your license and registration. I mean, where do you draw the line? When you have the government take your liberty from you, that's a big deal in my book. So it's a big deal. It's in the Fourth Amendment. I mean, that's why it's the rights of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against all unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. I mean, that's it. And I watch people die. They don't die because, in my opinion, I like to think, I mean, people are different, but I would like to think that they're not mercenaries, that they're actually out there risking their lives, to make our country better, to protect our freedoms. We always like to talk about that, but what does that mean? What does that mean? Anyway, so if the chain of command wants to make my life hell, which I assume they probably will try to, because all of this stuff is bubbling, and there's nothing that leads me to the conclusion that they wouldn't, then that's fine. But I'm going to fight them. I'm going to go all the way fighting them on this. I mean, I'll lose my career tomorrow, no problem. You can kick me out tomorrow. If I'm doing it for the right thing, no problem. I'm willing to go all the way. And if that...
There's an old adage, pick your battles. I mean,
right, that's right. That's my blog, pickyourbattles.net, and where I talk about a lot of these things.
So tell me how, again, I'm insight here. Why is sacrificing your career because for this?
Right. For the Constitution.
You just said it. No.
Right. For the Fourth Amendment. Oh, what do you mean no? That's not a Fourth Amendment violation?
No. This is, look at it for what it is. This could have gone away just like that.
Gone away. Yeah, it could have gone away if I'd have been like, oh, officer, and been real submissive with the guys, then, he probably wouldn't have arrested me. That's true. He'd probably go away if I wasn't going to make this a big part of my life. But the reason I am making it a big part of my life is because it is wrong. It is wrong. And I take the Constitution seriously. And unfortunately, a lot of the officers I work with don't. And that's too bad. I mean, that's a reality. I don't know a whole lot of Americans anymore. There's a lot of people who have lost perspective.
Obviously, you're very divisive.
Divisive?
Yeah. You just
I'm
called me
opinionated.
un-American a couple of times. You said that.
I said your view is un-American. I think that it's un-American, and I do. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. Anybody who says yes, sir, to a cop when they know the cop has done something wrong, how is that American?
You're just going to spend a large part of your life going through this when you could be teaching people to fly airplanes.
Right. There's a higher calling than teaching people to fly airplanes. Yeah. Well, if you watch an American die in combat,
you're willing to fight everything, and I'm not.
I'm not willing to fight everything. I'm willing to fight things that matter, and this matters. I mean, how does it not matter? We differ on our value system. I value the Fourth Amendment more than you do.
Paragraph 11 here. What you wrote, you said you were concerned that some of this may be due to retaliation. For who might be retaliating against you? Who should I go look into?
I believe you are retaliating against me, and I don't know exactly what the direction is from the top, but I am convinced that you are, yes, sir.
On what ground?
I believe you're getting guidance, probably, from the top on something that might be the academic freedom violation, the fact that I've raised issues to the general officer level, and I'm sure that the ill will that was born from the academic freedom violation and the comments that were spread all throughout Laughlin and throughout AATC.
But you think I'm retaliating against you for something happened before I was here?
I believe you've gotten guidance, and that would explain why you're giving me an LOR for 2 baseless charges.
Okay. Do you think I'm acting on the direction from General Renz, or?
I don't know if you are.
They're not even on my watch. I could really care less. The PT issue, I think both of them are solved too. That's the interesting thing. The PT issue, I think that's solved, right?
Yes, sir.
And no, I mean, probably not to your liking completely, maybe.
It was to my liking.
Was it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But it wasn't solved by AATC. It was solved by the Air Force.
Yeah. True. Well, yeah. And General Renz sent a letter that says, I think it's the way I read his letter, he supports PT, but there are times that you can't do it. You can't always do it, but he supports it.
Right.
And I think the academic freedom thing, why would I care about the academic freedom?
Because your bosses want you to care.
You really think so?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can set up a meeting with you and General Feast if you prefer. I'm sure, I do think that they would, General Feast probably, I don't know if General Renz is the guy, but I'm sure he would still make time. I can guarantee you, though, regardless, like if you want to talk to them, I guarantee you they have not even weighed in the least bit.
This audience, I'm sure, will not be surprised to learn that Ryno does not mince words. And he told the OG to his face that he was un-American, or believing that the conduct most becoming of an officer was not to question authority and stand up for the Constitution. So the rest of the road at Laughlin was, to say the least, rocky. Ryno was unconstitutionally detained by the Border Patrol. You may or may not have heard of that.
You think that I'm not an American citizen, is what you're telling me.
Well, define what that means.
You have a military ID.
That doesn't mean anything.
You have this ID.
Those aren't immigration documents.
You want a passport?
Are you a U.S. citizen?
I am a U.S. citizen.
You wouldn't answer me earlier.
You never asked me if I was a U.S. citizen.
America does need to police our border. Rick Rynerson understands that. He's an Air Force pilot who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now he's based in Texas, where he found he had to pass through checkpoints all the time.
There's no way to leave the border town without going through a checkpoint.
The checkpoint he had to pass through most often is 67 miles from the border.
I started to feel like I was asking permission to leave that town. I'm just traveling in the United States. I haven't crossed any borders, and I didn't really like that feeling.
So he installed cameras in his car.
Because I wanted to be able to prove the truth of events.
I've asked them if I'm free to go. I've asked them if they're detaining me. They won't answer any questions.
Here he's on the phone with a lawyer.
They're now standing around without telling me anything.
The gentleman was not answering any questions. I mean, he said...
That's not true, counsel, is it? He never once did not answer a question posed to him, did he, counsel? There is not a single incident where he was asked a question and did not pose it. He immediately produced his identification at minute 11 after he realized that that identification wasn't satisfactory, offered to produce 2 passports. That offer was not taken up, and then there was silence. I don't understand what he did that contributed to the lengthy time that they just sat there.
And they probably realize that what they're doing is probably not having a real impact on the mission.
Once you started exerting your rights, though, once you started claiming the rights that you have, do you think then, though, things changed and they went a little deeper into hassling you or harassing you?
Yes, sir, I do. I believe that they, they'd pulled me aside. They would secondary me. It was because I had, said no to them. Never mind the fact that I've answered every other question that has to do, that's relevant, but not wanting to tell them, what I intend to do over the weekend. Just that little bit offended them. So then I started to get the, lectures. You're the only pilot from the base who won't answer our questions, or, why won't you just tell us this, that, and the other. And then it became apparent to me that I was becoming known to agents there. So it started to just kind of get worse and worse.
Well, I want to apologize on behalf of the federal government for them doing that to you. They shouldn't have. Yeah. And so, again, I appreciate your service and thank you for being here.
Also, who was it who mentioned that the agents of the CBP wrote to the military, Mr. Ryerson, wrote to your military commander? Mr. Tomczyk, is it within the purview of the proper duties of a CBP official to write to military commanders or private employers about the conduct of, with allegations about the conduct of people who pass through a checkpoint?
Absolutely not, sir. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
So they have no authority to do that?
I am not aware of any such authority.
Mr. Ryerson, to your knowledge, was any action taken against these agents for going way beyond their authority in order to hurt somebody?
No, sir, there was no action taken to my knowledge.
So if it was your job to be a border guard and somebody wouldn't answer questions, wouldn't you want to detain them?
Well, you might want to, but unless you have reasonable suspicion for a crime...
I'm suspicious because he won't answer questions.
Lack of cooperation cannot be used as a basis for reasonable suspicion. This is a person who's having to stop in the middle of a road, who has done nothing wrong, and finds himself surrounded by armed government agents with dogs.
The Border Patrol would not respond to our questions about this. So Congressman Peter King defended the agency. I think of Border Patrol as Border Patrol. These are inland. Isn't there something un-American about 100 miles from the border, American citizens having to prove we're Americans just to drive to work or the grocery store?
We live in a very upsetting world. You always have to balance the equities.
Americans have the right to be free in their own country, to drive within their own country. Real freedom lies in the thin space that separates an American citizen from an armed member of their government.
That thin line keeps getting thinner.
And in fact, at one point he was ordered by his commander not to talk about the Constitution to students. On advice of counsel, Ryno will not be answering any questions as to whether or not he obeyed that order.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't name you. I know the IG complaint's filed only against the wing commander at this time. So the IG was supplied with the audio evidence, and I've talked to you about the audio evidence before. absolutely crystal clear proof that it was completely fabricated. So yeah, the second charge is a complete lie. First charge is obviously a lie, but you guys decided not to believe that. So
What is the second part of it? I wasn't really clear on what you were trying to convey over to me.
Oh.
I'm just what was I understood it. Obviously,
I'm trying to say that.
But do you need something from me?
Well,
Like
I would just like to let that's what basically I'm looking for. What I'm hoping is that the Air Force decides to do what it needs to do so that the institution doesn't suffer for the results of the actions of a few liars in uniform. That's what I want to see done, and a good start would be giving that lieutenant what she very richly deserves. She was taking notes during this meeting. There was two of them in there. The one, Langston, he refused to correct the record when I emailed him. He knows what's going on. He didn't go on the record because he didn't pen that memo, but they know what they're doing. Well, she did pen the memo, and it was a fabrication from start to finish.
Again, dude, I feel like I've been kind of open with you. I've held it in that credit. I can't.
I don't think that's correct. I mean, you're definitely part of the problem. I mean, you wanted to be open and friendly with me, but you were absolutely part of the problem when it came down to this. Now, you haven't done anything explicitly. The wing commanders trumped you. That's why I didn't name you, but I don't trust you at all.
Okay. If I get an update, I'll let you know what it is. Just you don't trust me.
Okay. Well, I'm just doing due diligence. You voted, right? The wing commander, you were there, and you said, yeah. Yeah, based on my track record?
Mm-hmm.
What track record is that?
I just got an email from Director of Homeland Security, the Office of Homeland Security, about your Uvalde. So, you seem to have a...
Do you know what happened in Uvalde?
I don't.
Okay, so you don't know if it's right or wrong.
Okay. I don't know.
And that didn't happen. That didn't happen when you decided to tell the wing commander you recommended.
No. Don't read too much into this. I'm just saying, you we'll just leave it. If you don't trust me, we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I just talked to him. Raul Perez, I think is his name.
Oh yeah. I have 7 cameras in my car, and I caught the entire thing. Why? Because there's too many people who are in uniform that have taken an oath to defend the Constitution who are liars. That's why.
Okay.
And it's blatant. They violated my Fourth Amendment rights, and they did that very clearly on camera. They detained me for 32 minutes. They lied about why they detained me, and it's clearly caught. And you've just verified that they actually did make contact with the Air Force, interfering with my work. And you just said that that's part of my track record that's negative.
You have a track record of having conflicts with people in uniform.
Righteous conflict.
That's not a lie, dude.
Right. That's right. Because they have a track record of being lying sacks of shit who don't do their job correctly.
All right.
Now, if you'd like me not to take my oath of office, seriously, I know you ordered me not to talk about the Constitution.
I'm not going to get into the conversation.
Right.
When I get the statements from Border Patrol, I'll give you a chance to look through them.
Right.
Okay. Fair enough.
Good times. Just trying to work more leadership challenges for you.
Okay.
I'll try to keep working these leadership challenges for you. You're doing a great job so far.
But I want you to know that he didn't only stand up for the Constitution, he also called out practices he thought were unsafe, including at Laughlin at that time, punishing 6-day triple turning weeks. He managed to actually get that practice turned off.
Spur 42 is now canceled. Spur 42 is now
And when he left Laughlin, one of his colleagues asked in all seriousness, but who's going to defend us now? The answer, of course, is you. Everyone stands on their own 2 feet. But I'll let Ryno talk more about that later. But when he left Laughlin, as he was leaving, they turned back on the 6-day weeks. On his very last day at Laughlin, he went into the boss's office and said, "You're going to bend some metal if you keep doing this." The boss said, "Thank you for your input. By the way, you're not getting a decoration." And 7 weeks later, unfortunately, that unit did have a Class A mishap. But by this time, we had moved on to Cannon. Now, you might be thinking that an RPA assignment at Cannon was Laughlin leadership's punishment for what had gone on, but you would be wrong. Ryno actually volunteered for Cannon. He volunteered for RPA because he sees that as the future of the Air Force, and he wanted to put his money where his mouth is and help the mission and not just participate in a fun flying club. And ironically, because he wanted to do it, Laughlin leadership actually tried to turn it off. And they offered us Davis-Monthan. Gee, who wouldn't want Tucson over Clovis, New Mexico, am I right? But because of the mission, Clovis it was, and so Clovis we went.
When the LOR closes out, there's a host of other things that you okay. So, one, I'm going to give you a copy of this. You don't need to sign this one. It's officially the UAF action on there. The letter that you got states that they're going to file a UAF, and that's the acknowledgement, that's the signature. But this is the official document. It'll just be stamped and goes into the actual initiation. You know what an OSR is? Officer Selection Record?
I do not.
An OSR is a file that sits with your official records, which is it basically stays around for your for any of your subsequent promotions. Okay. So it's a file that says that you always have an OSR, but this is going to be a file that UIF, or consider the LOR UIF consideration for input into that OSR. For this, frankly, it doesn't matter for this next board, but it will matter for the subsequent board because you'll have an opportunity to bring it out. In this board, you're going to have the LOR UIF. It's mandatory that's there. It's going to be there for 2 years. Or at least 1 year. It's meant for 1 year, and after 1 year, you can take that. You can have that out.
But this is we're challenging the termination of Air Force officers. There were 157 officers who were terminated, and they were within what we think of as the 6-year protected window. They had all promoted to major, and they were within 6 years of retiring. And ordinarily, if you've promoted to 04 and you have no misconduct and you're within 6 years, it's kind of a safe haven. Well, the Secretary of the Air Force unilaterally changed that window, and we think there's an open question about whether or not he had discretion to do that. So we've looked at the granting statute and some of the floor debates at the time, and it was really clear that the intent behind the statute was to provide some employment protection for service members, that it was to be treated as a protected window. Well, this really upset the apple cart there. We had service members getting out, and some of the stories were pretty dramatic.
We didn't know it at the time, but Cannon would actually lead to the most significant achievement of Ryno's career, which was, somewhat ironically, documented in a letter of reprimand. This is a long story, but it's an important one, and although I know that many of you know parts of it, no summation of Ryno's career would be complete without it, so I will relay it to you now. In the spring of 2011, Ryno went into work, and when he heard what the mission was, he concluded that it violated the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment provides no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. No person. He informed leadership of his objection. He was switched to another mission, and for several months thereafter, he continued to fly other missions. He was just scheduled on other missions.
Jonas brothers are here. They're out there somewhere. Sasha and Malia are huge fans, but boys don't get any ideas. I have 2 words for you: Predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
Administration. How will Obama defend his secret kill list next week at the foreign policy debate?
That's an American citizen that's being targeted without due process of law, without trial, and he's underage, he's a minor.
I would suggest that you should have a far more responsible father if they're truly concerned about the well-being of their children.
You said that he was responsible for these things.
Yes, but again...
Is there going to be any evidence presented?
I don't have anything for you on that.
Do you not see at all, does the administration not see at all how a president asserting that he has the right to kill an American citizen without due process, and that he's not going to even explain why he thinks he has that right, is troublesome to some people? What do you think constitutional law professor Barack Obama would think of this?
I think he spoke about it today.
According to NBC News, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer has said that no American citizens will be targeted in military strikes under President Donald Trump, suggesting a break from one of the Obama administration's most controversial efforts.
Then the commander decided that approach was no longer going to work, and he told Ryno he had to either fly the mission or he would go the quote-unquote legal route. So he gave Ryno the order to fly the mission, and Ryno refused. He brought in a witness, he gave Ryno the order to fly the mission, and Ryno refused in front of a witness. Ryno then got an area defense counsel, smart move, and the commander decided that the order should be repeated in writing. I will never forget, ever, sitting at the Red Lobster in Clovis, New Mexico, when we got the call that he needed to go into the boss's office to review this order in writing and sign his refusal in writing. But he did. And it was all handled very calmly and professionally on all sides.
Damage. We also had issues, obviously, concerning lethal force against U.S. citizens. I'd like to encourage the law students here who are thinking about a career, think about a career serving your country. You'll find it remarkably rewarding. And so I said the same thing to a group of Yale law students about 2 years ago in a speech sort of comprehensive like this. And what was interesting about it is that the national media covering the speech, I ended the speech the same way. The national media covering the speech, headlines were, DOD lawyer, Pentagon lawyer defends drone strikes.
Now, addressing any one of these challenges is a tall order. Addressing all of them at once is a monumental task. But that's what the dedicated men and women of the Department of Homeland Security do every day. And today I'm proud to announce my choice to lead them. An outstanding public servant who I've known and trusted for years, Mr. Jay Johnson.
But I personally was terrified. I thought for sure we were headed to a court-martial. I did not know where this was going to end up. After a few months of waiting on pins and needles, well, it felt like a few months, it may have been a few weeks. However, the command decided to issue Ryno a letter of reprimand. That was both good and bad. On the upside, an LOR, Ryno had so many we named our ferret Lors, spelled L-O-R-S. On the downside, an LOR did not resolve anything. It didn't adjudicate the lawfulness of the order. If he'd been given it again, or a similar mission, the cycle would have simply repeated itself. So Ryno decided that the only thing he could do was to resign his commission, even though he had 15 plus years of active duty service at that time. So in the 3 days that you have to respond to an LOR, he filled out also this resignation form that he found online and paperwork, and when he responded to the LOR, he delivered that as well to the squadron commander. And Ryno went for a year, and his security clearance was suspended, and he was taken off the flight line at that time. And he went for a year and worked, and I use that term very loosely, in the CE squadron. Bear in mind, he's a religion major, while we waited to see what would happen. What we did not know is at that time, the command, in addition to suspending his clearance, had attempted to permanently revoke it, probably with an eye of a separation thereafter. So we are waiting in limbo. I'm sitting in my office. I get a call. Ryno says, I just got a call, I have to report to the commander's office. I'm not gonna lie, my heart sank. In my experience, That call had not led to flowers and roses. So he went in, and a few hours later he called me and he said, the Air Force rejected the command's attempt to revoke my security clearance. They want me out of Cannon as quickly as possible, and they're offering me Korea with a follow-on to the White Jet assignment of my choice. I'm sure my colleagues could hear me yell, take the assignment from down the hall. And so we were off to Korea.
Here is Laura's bedroom, her closets. She has all her fur coats in there. The view from that window. See, it just snowed last night. See the hiking. This is the main area. Patio would really be awesome. You can see the loft up there. Kitchen. Let's see. And here's BT's bedroom. And here's my bedroom. Up the stairs. Here we have a loft. A variety of toys on the ground for the cat and the weasel. And then the upstairs balcony, which is a tragedy waiting to happen with this weasel until I figure out how to weasel proof it. You can see it recently snowed. It's snowing right now. This is the view from the 15th floor. All these mountains there is a mountain bike trail, 10 miles of it, which I'm going to go check out here before too long. Let's see how far down it is. Oh yeah. It's kind of far down.
There was one tiny little wrinkle. As I mentioned, the Air Force had offered Ryno the White Jet assignment of his choice, and he chose Pensacola. But AFPC said, well, it'll take some time to arrange Pensacola, but we can get you orders to Vance right now. And I'm not kidding, folks. I offered to pay him $20,000 to take Vance because I was that anxious to get orders finished and get the hell out of Cannon. But he held out for his original deal. And he got Pensacola, and after a year in the land of the morning calm, we arrived back in the Gulf Coast where we had met more than a decade before. And the rest has been, as Ryno would say, living the dream. The episode at Cannon was not easy. I'm not gonna lie, at least not for me. But it was the kind of crucible that I think really shows you what kind of a man Ryno is and what kind of an officer he is. A lot of adjectives can and have been used to describe Ryno. Obnoxious, abrasive, arrogant. I can't dispute any of those, at least part of the time. But you have to add honest, dedicated, principled, and devoted to the Constitution. I'll leave you with the words of a nameless, faceless bureaucrat at a little-known agency called the Air Force Central Adjudication Facility. This is the agency, I had never heard of it, that decides whether or not someone's security clearance is permanently revoked or not. We obtained a copy of the adjudication file through FOIA, so we don't have this person's name. But this person is probably the person most directly responsible for the fact that Ryno is sitting before you and retiring today. And he or she said, On the surface, it would appear that receipt of multiple letters of counseling and reprimands would indicate questionable judgment and an unwillingness to comply with rules and regulations. However, when each incident is reviewed on its own merit, it would appear that Major Ryno is fully aware of the U.S. Constitution and has openly challenged what he perceives to be a violation of either his own rights or those of other American citizens. If I had to sum up his career in a phrase, I would say fidelity to the Constitution. I'm honored to have been on this journey with him and to celebrate his Air Force career today.
Ladies and gentlemen, the retirement portion of today's ceremony will now begin. Please rise and remain standing for the reading of the retirement order.
Publish the order.
By order of the Secretary of the Air Force and the Department of the Air Force, Special Order Number Alpha Charlie-334, Major Richard L. Ryno is relieved from active duty, 455th Flying Training Squadron, Naval Air Station, Pensacola, and is retired from active duty with the United States Air Force, effective 1 October 2016, in the grade of Major after 20 years of faithful and honorable duty. Ladies and gentlemen, Major Ryno.
It's really awesome to have you guys here, especially those of you who traveled. We got one guy, Tom, came from Bragg, drove down, and then Ed came down came up, I guess, from Bureau. And then Nick, came here from DC. He flew his helicopter, so he actually got here later than Tom did driving. And that's really all I have. So I'm just going to wrap it up right there. That's it. I'm just kidding. They did come because they wanted to see if I was going to say something stupid, and they wanted to be able to post on John Q. Politician's Facebook page and go, I was there when it happened. So I won't disappoint. I'll give a little bit of a soapbox. Let's see. But before I do that, it's awesome to be here in this squadron. This squadron is extremely important to me and to us. And it was an extremely meaningful experience, certainly the best experience I've had in my career. I love the culture here. It is, as Highland said, a tough culture, but it is a combat culture. And the best parts of the Air Force that I've experienced have been in this squadron. But one of the great things about this squadron is, not only is this the real deal as far as Air Force combat aviation is concerned, this outfit is unlike any other outfit that is out there. The 19th SOS, the motto I love, right? Deeds, not words. The Air Force is filled with words. This place is filled with deeds, and everybody knows it. This is where the real stuff happens.
Welcome back to Mail Call. Not too long ago, I got an email from Lee in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, asking me to check out what he calls a real war machine, the AC-130U gunship. And once I found out that this baby has the biggest gun in the sky, it was an offer that I just couldn't refuse. We hauled ass down to the Florida Panhandle to visit Hurlburt Field, home of the Air Force's 16th Special Operations Wing and the 4th Special Operations Squadron. The men and women of the 4th SOS are known as Ghost Riders, and the AC-130U gunship they fly is dubbed Spooky. With a 25mm Gatling gun, 40mm rapid-fire cannon, and a 105mm howitzer mounted under the left wing, Spooky circles the target like a big dark cloud, hurling a hailstorm of lead. Beginning with their rapid-fire introduction in Vietnam, these gunships have seen action in just about every U.S. engagement since, including operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. And there is no doubt that enemies all over the world know the AC-130's reputation as a ghostly gunslinger.
And I think because of that, you know, there's just this, people prioritize things differently, and leadership is produced that is just top notch. I mean, exceptional people, exceptional leadership. I had all great commanders here in the 5 years I got to spend here. But you know, they had a security. They knew what was important, and you just didn't get the Mickey Mouse stuff that I saw in my last 10 years in a non-combat command. And for those who were here, Ed, I know, was here in the squadron. Tim was here, I believe, in the squadron still. You guys know, or you may know, why it was so important for Colonel Monroe to give an invitation today. So, Colonel Monroe is the best commander I've ever had, and I've had several great commanders here. It's a good thing to be able to look at a commander and actually be inspired and awed and humbled. So I appreciate that very much. And I'll add too, before I become a huddler fighter pilot here, I'll add that, you know, I was not his favorite by a long shot. You know, we disagreed, we butted heads, in, you know, fairly significant ways, probably far more significant than most people would butt heads with the commander. And not only was he a secure commander, like other commanders have done, I've butted heads with them, and I still got upgraded to aircraft commander with some inputs that were very helpful, thank you, Tim. But he actually protected me from people above him who wanted my head. He protected me so that I could disagree with him. And it was just awesome. The quality of leadership in this squadron was phenomenal. But it was more than that. It was also, you know, it was in the trenches. You know, I'm not a gunship representative. I'm not going to stand up here and be like, yeah, you know, everybody in the gunship squadron is like me. That's definitely not the case. In fact, I think it's fair to say that I have a few people from the gunship community who are still not on Team Ryno. It's shocking, I know. But it was a place where you could be different, and you could be, you could even say eccentric. I mean, we have UOs. You know, these people are weird. But, you know, it's a different community. But if you love to kill the enemy, and you love to protect guys on the ground, and you can do your job, you can survive. And I loved it. I love this job. All right, so I'm very happy to be here today for my final day. So that's that. Thank you, Aiden, for being here. Aiden, I did not know until Korea, actually. We were up there doing a staff weenie job together, and I have been very impressed in you. He's just a top-notch guy. You guys, thanks for coming down as well. Chief, thank you so much for coming down. I really appreciate it. And obviously, it's great to have somebody from the old days. You know, I just talked to you yesterday, and you were supposed to fly tonight, right? Yeah, in this squadron, just going to pack ammunition. So thanks for doing that, man. For being here. All right, cool. That's the thanks. Oh yeah, one more. Let's see. Everybody here knows the game, you know, it's not that I'm unorthodox, it's just I couldn't find anybody else to do it, to say nice things about me. I asked a couple of fighter pilots, and one was, I think he had like a hair salon appointment, and the other guy had a lingerie party, I think it was, or something. But anyway, they had excuses, they wouldn't do it. But I was like, you know what, I can get a government lawyer to say anything. So, John Yu taught me that, John Yu. Anyway, so I asked Helen to do it, and actually, in all seriousness, she was my first choice, and she actually said no too. And I knew when I proposed to her for the first time, it was pretty much the same experience, but I was able to talk her into it. She has been beyond a spouse. I mean, she has really been my wingman. I don't like that term really, but it's totally true in her case. She's done so much more than your average spouse. And I mean, she has done so much to, you know, just give me good advice, keep me out of trouble, and put up with You know, we didn't have a conversation when this stuff happened. These were decisions I made, and then she got to deal with the uncertainty that came out of it later. But very honored to have her here to do this. Nobody deserves to be on this stage talking about my career more than she does. She's been amazing. Thank you very much. And she was our install officer during the time of war, although she didn't know how high mix did. So back to how we met, just real quick. So we were deployed to I guess it's a classified location. I think it's been released now for the beginning of Iraq. And we had this Iraqi MiG fly over us at a really high altitude, right? And so I told her about it. She's like, no, they can't fly that high. I'm like, yeah, they can. And she's our intel officer. She's deployed there. I'm like, yeah, they can. She's like, no, they can't. This is before we were, engaged or anything. So what I got her to do was, I was like, I'll make you a bet that it was flying that high. And so I got her to write it out. We wrote it out. And then she went and found out. And actually, so I have a piece of paper that talks about an intel officer being bested by a pilot, blah, 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 blah. I got that signed. It's in my box, my memory box. Anyway, all right, so, okay, I'll keep this quick, my last soapbox. And good news and bad news, which is what I told my last student like a week and a half ago. I told him I got good news and bad news. The good news is you're the last student I'm ever going to fly with. Bad news is I've never hooked anybody and I've always wanted to. And then I told him I was just kidding, so that's one more student feedback, critique probably I got from that. But at any rate, the good news here today is I will give you a soapbox, and there is the chance that, there's a jury assembled next door and Jack come out and they'll get you right at the last minute, and you get to watch that. The bad news is I'm going to try to keep that from happening. So I'm going to limit this. There's so much I could say, but I'm going to limit this to just a couple. Why does the Constitution matter? Why should it matter to us? And I'll even back it up one more before you even go to the Constitution. Strategic versus tactical, right? Those are things we hear from people about Air War College or whatever. That's supposed to be a really fancy, educated thing. I think it boils down to we're supposed to think about what we do before we do it to try to figure out what's going to happen when we do it, right? So you can do a tactical thing and win, and it can be a strategic failure, and vice versa. So the lesson there is we should think about what is the big picture. And so what is the big picture of us wearing our uniforms today? What is the big picture of us serving? What is the big picture of us dropping, 105s on people's foreheads? Why do we do what we do? And the big picture is spelled out in the DoD instruction, actually. And the DoD instruction lists what is the primary job of the Department of Defense. And what is that job according to this instruction? It is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is our job. And when you take the time to think about that, what that means, it makes sense. That is the big strategic goal. And why does it make sense? Because that's what we are defending. It's not just fighting, it's what is it that you are trying to defend. If you lose sight of that, and you go out and just start swinging away, throwing punches, dropping GBUs, and you lose sight of what it is you're trying to defend, you may lose it. And you might be damn good when it comes to dropping GBUs, and you'll still lose. So think about this hypothetical. We go off and realize, of course, I'm trying to talk to the broader audience that is not here. Think of this hypothetical. We go, we deploy, we kill all the guys who need to be killed, no collateral damage. We don't lose any Americans. And everybody in the Middle East starts listening to Toby Keith. They start playing baseball. They start baking apple pies. I mean, they're so good that they, they're practically Americans, right? They convert over to English. They have democracies where their candidates are not liked by anybody in the country. They become that democracy we want to spread around the world. Imagine that happens, that glorious vision of Americanizing the Middle East. We do that, we're able to do that. And then we redeploy back home. And we land, and our family comes out to greet us, and we notice some protesters behind them with signs that say baby killer also behind them, but they get whisked away real quick by some dudes in black, thrown into Humvees. You see up on the TV some stars and stripes and red, white, and blue little icons flashing, and it talks about the latest SWAT raid on a house because somebody posted on Facebook that they don't like cops. Imagine that in this world that you come back to, your government is assassinating American citizens with drones who do not present a threat to anybody and who can be rolled up and given their day in court, just like the Constitution demands. Imagine that the prosecution of journalists for reporting the truth about things as they see it in accordance with the First Amendment. Imagine that Congress passes a law and the president signs it into law saying that the United States military can be used to arrest Americans in America without charge or trial and then put them in prison indefinitely without them ever seeing a jury and ever getting convicted. Imagine that was the world you came back to. Strategically, did freedom win? Did we defend America? That is a key question. And we need to think about why we're doing what we're doing. If you're just doing it for a paycheck, well, then that's an easy answer. You're just doing it for a paycheck. And if you're just doing it because you want to get promoted and you want people to think you're cool because you got some shiny little birds or whatever on your epaulets, then that's cool. That's the answer for you. You got that. It's cool. That's not going to win any wars, though, because that is totally disconnected with why we fight. You might as well be serving in North Korea if that's your attitude. Because you could be a North Korean exchange officer. It's not like they don't have the same motivations when they serve over there. But America is supposed to be something different. And that's what thinking about why we fight and what it is we're protecting is so important, to make sure that we don't lose sight of what it is. Because we can go and we can shack every target and we can still be defeated from the inside. We can still lose. So, deeds, not words. Foreign and domestic enemies. There are foreign and domestic enemies. And for my first 10 years, I was lucky to go prosecute some of the foreign ones. And I enjoyed that opportunity, even though I didn't agree with the Iraq War at all, from the beginning. It was legal, and the American people sent me there. So this is a public service job, So for me, over the years, I've gotten flack from veterans who say that I'm too, question too much, or I speak, I'm not party line enough. Then I get flack from so-called activists or whatever who, call me a baby killer, et cetera, whatever. I'm a statist or whatever. This is a public service job. The American people put millions of dollars invested into me for me to execute their will in accordance with the law. And the law is our morality. It's not about what I think is right or wrong. It's about what the American people think is right or wrong, and what they distill into our law. So if they say go to Iraq, and it's lawful, I go to Iraq. I don't have to like it, but I'm serving them. And it would be immoral of me to not carry out their will after they invest millions of dollars in my training. The person who works at Waffle House, she doesn't even know where Iraq is on a map, but she's working her ass off. And people across America who don't have the opportunity to go to ROTC, to go to college, to get paid to think about things, when they can be troubled to think about things, while they're not, watching football or whatever it is that they're doing. These people rely on us wearing a uniform to think about these things. That's why they make us take an oath. That's why our Constitution requires of the officers, in Article 6, it requires of us to take an oath to support the Constitution, right? Those things matter. Even if Americans forget they matter. In fact, when they forget it matters even more, in my opinion. So, Constitution matters. Why? Diversity of opinion, right? We have 300 million Americans in this place. We're different. We have different values. We have different religious beliefs. We have different senses of humor. We have, all kinds of differences. How are we going to make it work? Well, the way we're going to make it work is we're going to recognize that, hey, everybody has a right to free speech. You have a right to disagree with each other. You have a right to worship whoever you want. And then everyone can disagree, and that's a good thing, and debate, and you don't have to like each other. But what you won't do is exercise the machinery of government to take and suppress the opinions of somebody else, right? You're not going to do that. That's non-negotiable. Now, Tony Carr might think otherwise, okay, but it is not negotiable. We've settled that, right? Our rights are inalienable, and they are not to be destroyed, whether that means a powerful person who's in a position or whether that means a majority of the country. They're not negotiable. That is important for diversity. If we are to get along in this country, we have to have that. Tyranny, it's alive and well. Okay, we're not in a magical world where, for all of human history, people have wanted to use power to suppress and oppress other people for their own gain. But what? Magically, we're over that? There are people in our country who think that's actually the case. They think that 1940s Germany is something out of a storybook, rather than another Western country relatively recently that had a constitution and had people that are in a great deal like Americans legally fall into fascism and unspeakable horrors. Those things happen. It's important for us to realize human nature hasn't changed. And yeah, we might want to think that world we live in is different than that can't happen anymore. All those crazy nutters over there, they believe that, that is naive if you think that human nature has changed. And the way you keep that from happening again is by honoring and defending and valuing the Bill of Rights. It gives us the ability to speak out, to protest our government, and to defend ourselves with arms from that government should the need arise. All right, the world hasn't changed. Tyranny does happen. So the Constitution is important. And even if you don't agree with me, even if you don't think the Constitution is important, if you're wearing this uniform, you swore to support and defend it. You swore you would bear true faith and allegiance to it. All right? And you did so before God, whether you believe in God or not. You did it also before the American taxpayers. And you're taking money from them. Okay, and it's not like they're volunteering to give you, money like you're on a pole and they're putting 20s in your belt line. All right, it doesn't work like that. The way it works is they're going to pony up the cash, or somebody with a gun is going to go snatch them up. That's how it works, right? So they don't have a choice, and they're paying for us to defend their rights. And you swore that you would do that. And if you're a military officer, you're obligated by the Constitution itself in Article 6 to do that. And oh, by the way, you were probably sent to college to think about that. There's no excuse for getting it wrong. It takes 30 minutes to read that document. It was not written in Old English. There isn't, he begat so-and-so who begat so-and-so. It's really just like anything you read today. If you want to, if you can tear yourself away from your fantasy football picks for 1 second to think about your job that you are paid for. Now, you might not get a great strat if you care about the Constitution. You might not. You may not get promoted. You may not get fancy parking spot or whatever it is next to the expecting mother or whatever. You might not get that. But you're doing your job correctly. And that is the primary purpose of us. It's not to fly airplanes. It's not even to kill the enemy. It is to defend the Constitution. I don't care how many people like you. I don't care how many people show up to your retirement ceremony. If you can't get that right, you don't deserve to be wearing a uniform. All right. That message needs to get out more than anything today. And it should be real basic stuff. All right, mental reservations. Just going to list these real quickly because it doesn't get enough airplay either. We took an oath and said that not only are we going to support and defend this document, the Constitution, but we were going to do so without any mental reservations or purposes of evasion. Okay. What is that? Here are some that I see. Number one, you have to be smart in order to know the Constitution. You don't have to be smart. it's a document like any other document. In our communities, we're reading -1s. I mean, our flight engineers are fucking going through charts that I couldn't go through these charts. 30 minutes to read the Constitution, to understand what it means, to think about it, to ponder it. Anybody can do it. It was not written, for scholars. It was written for Americans, right? So that excuse doesn't work. This idea, I hear this one all the time, that lawyers decide what it means. You got to be a lawyer. This is something special. That's totally incorrect. It doesn't require lawyers or somebody with a certification to read clear text written by American people to be followed by their government. We can all read that. It's nothing that requires a specialized training. Likewise, this idea that courts have to decide what it means. All right, courts do not have to decide what it means. Yes, the judiciary has its function, but its function is not to tell us what the Constitution means. All right. We took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, not what some court says it means, not what some lawyer tells us it means, John Yoo or some other spineless coward that will write anything they are told to write, anything. And then, oh, with a legal opinion, well, the boss says, well, we're going to go ahead and do this, says that black is white and white is black. Well, they got a legal opinion here, that is not that's not acceptable, right? And if you are allowing yourself to buy that nonsense, to allow yourself to take the easy course of action, and should you ever find yourself tested, then it is on you. You're doing it. Yeah, they're offering you that. That's why they come up with that horse shit. You, though, have the burden of your commission. Everybody here, but especially officers, you are a check and balance. You individually are a check and balance. Right? Everybody in this room, whether they do it in public or they do it in private, talks about the government or some people in government with probably less than favorable tones. Some of you with more passion than others. Some are like, well, I'm not going to put anything out there. But most people, even if it's a private conversation, realize when you're doing that you're talking about government, and you yourself are government. Right? A lot of us, I think, forget that we are also government. If you think that it's okay to not consider your service, your constitutional obligation to the American people who pay you, and instead your central tenet is getting promoted, getting a good assignment, being liked by your peers, being a good bro, all that stuff. If that is your central tenet, instead of service, then ask yourself why or how, why should those other people you're complaining about be any different? Why shouldn't their central tenet be to get the best thing that they can get from themselves? It's no different, and we're no different. We are government, and we all need to own up to our obligation. Another mental reservation interpretation, I love that one. You think, everything can be interpreted the way, we want it to be interpreted. I mean, different interpretations. Okay, it is true. The text needs to be interpreted, right, on the most basic level. It is true that there can be differences of opinion on what something means. But to think that the text is an X variable that you can just insert your opinion like it's plastic or it's Play-Doh and you can just make it be whatever you want, that's a incorrect and probably a dishonest approach to the Constitution, to the text. We can have differences in what we think the text means. That's okay. And you certainly shouldn't be like, I'm going to do what Ryno says because he thinks the Constitution means this. I've never said that of anyone. I've argued my viewpoint. But it's on all of us individually for us to have that obligation. We individually are the check and balance. But if you are approaching the text because you want it to mean something, if you're approaching the text not because you want to divine what it says, what the American people say, or rather you're approaching it to try to make it fit what you want it to say, then you are approaching it dishonestly. And that is a mental reservation.